We start with good news, and England is set to be one of the freest countries in Europe, as all final COVID restrictions are to be lifted a month ahead of time. Well done to the Prime Minister for standing his ground against sage voices, many of whom are not happy with this development. The esteemed political journalist Robert Peston tweeted the following this week. Take a look at this. He tweeted, "No one in or around Sage and Nerve-Tag is aware of any scientific advice given to the Prime Minister that the requirement to isolate for those infected with COVID-19 should be terminated from the end of the month. It's politics, isn't it?" is a typical reaction, writes Peston. Well, are these the same sage scientists who predicted up to 6,000 deaths a day without restrictions over Christmas? Here's the article in The Guardian. There it is in black and white. Perhaps those sage scientists are best ignored. Our embattled Prime Minister was responsible for Freedom Day on the 19th of July, which we were told was reckless, but cases fell. And we're currently reaping the benefits of not cancelling Christmas, with the Mail reporting today that, surprise, surprise, the economy recovered more quickly over Christmas thanks to that decision. So there's light at the end of the tunnel, and we appear to be approaching the end of this national nightmare. As Scotland and Wales persist with needless COVID measures, they're going to look increasingly isolated and out of touch. But as the tangible threat from the virus ebbs away, the colossal damage from our arrogant attempt to stop this virus will be with us not just for years, but for decades to come. And that's why tonight, folks, exclusively on this programme, I've written an open letter to those who consistently pushed for these measures in the first place and who demonised the rest of us who thought they were wrong. Here is my letter to them. Dear lockdown lovers, you cannot have a massive rise in NHS funding. You cannot fix social care. You cannot have a bigger army, more libraries, more swimming pools, or more police on the streets. You cannot have more teachers, more apprenticeships, more government grants, more fixed potholes. You cannot have a boost to mental health services. You cannot have more counter-terrorism officers, more troops for abroad, or more midwives, ambulance drivers, or ear, nose and throat surgeons here at home. You cannot have public sector pay rises. You cannot have help with your fuel bill. You cannot have lower taxes, better wages, or low inflation. You cannot have any of these things. And you can't have things that in the future you haven't even thought of yet or anticipated, like another pandemic, perhaps a worse one, a natural disaster, or a war. Those are the things you cannot have because they all require a healthy economy, something it was government policy to destroy. Shutting down once viable businesses, closing schools and gyms, and stopping healthy people from going out to work, contributing to the economy, making money for their families, and paying their bills. With lockdowns, mask mandates, social distancing, arrows in supermarkets, bubbles, stay-at-home orders, and curfews that so many pushed for, including most of the media, we have willfully destroyed the economy that pays for everything, including human life itself. There is a direct correlation between a healthy economy and a healthy society. Damaging the economy wrecks lives, but it kills too. So, lockdown cheerleaders, all of this is on you. The only thing you can have is the bill for these policies. You can have the massive non-COVID death toll, which will obviously dwarf that of COVID. And you can have the NHS waiting list, which some fear will hit 14 million people by the time we're done. You can have £500 billion worth of national debt. You can have wrecked lives and sad, illiterate kids. It became clear to me, and so many of you watching at home, that this was the wrong approach from the start. 3 weeks to flatten the curve was about long enough to prove it wouldn't work. More fool us for going along with the madness in the first place. Many of us spoke out, and we were bad people, apparently. Except that, in my view, history will judge as bad those who aggressively backed this scientifically debatable tyranny and crushed any wider discourse on the subject. People were dreadful. They dobbed in their neighbours to the police for leaving the house more than once, for not wearing a mask in a certain setting, or drinking coffee alone on the beach. So, lockdown fanatics, be proud of your legacy, because it's all on you. Now that we're left with a poorer, more divided society, it's time to think again about who the bad guys are. So many, of course, are crying out and will be crying out for massive government spending all over the shop. There are marches happening across the country tomorrow asking the government to deal with the cost of living crisis. Take a look at this. It's an advert and it's for a march that's happening tomorrow in Manchester, supported by the trade union Unite. But weren't the unions behind school closures and all of the other COVID measures? I'm so confused. You can't seek protection for an economy so obviously damaged by measures for which you previously asked. I've been a stuck record about damage to the economy, but my words and yours fell on deaf ears. The lockdown-loving masked militia will very shortly see the colossal price that we've paid for this unprecedented and, in my view, failed scientific experiment of shutting the country down for a nasty virus, yes, but one non-fatal to the vast majority. For those who pushed for lockdowns, all of this is on you. It will be the biggest I told you so in history.